Liam and the monster had journeyed through treacherous terrain, emerging from a dense forest to face the sorcerer's lair, a castle perched on a jagged cliff above a stormy sea. The castle's dark, ancient walls were scarred by time, its twisted towers reaching into the stormy sky as if clawing at the thunderclouds above. The wind howled through the narrow mountain pass, carrying the scent of salt and the violent sound of waves crashing against the rocks below. As they approached the castle, its iron gate creaked open on its own, as if the fortress were alive, anticipating their arrival. Inside, the castle was as forbidding as its exterior. Cold stone walls lined the narrow corridors, and the flickering light of torches cast eerie shadows that seemed to dance with a life of their own. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and old magic, and every step echoed through the empty halls. Finally, they reached the heart of the castle, a vast chamber with a high, vaulted ceiling. At the far end stood the sorcerer, a tall, imposing figure draped in black robes. His face was pale and gaunt, his eyes sharp and cold as ice. He stood before a massive throne carved from dark stone, his long, bony fingers resting on the armrest as he watched them approach. "So, you have come to challenge me," the sorcerer hissed, his voice a low, venomous whisper that echoed through the chamber. His lips curled into a sneer as he looked down at Liam, a mere boy who had dared to confront him in his own lair. "Foolish boy." Liam did not flinch. He met the sorcerer's gaze with a calm, steady resolve. "I have not come to challenge you," Liam replied, his voice clear and unwavering. "I have come to ask you to lift the curse you placed on this creature. He does not deserve to suffer for your cruelty." The sorcerer's eyes narrowed, and the air in the chamber grew even colder. Then, without warning, the sorcerer threw back his head and laughed, a cold, bitter sound that filled the room with a palpable sense of malice. "And why should I do that?" he asked, his voice dripping with disdain. "What could you possibly offer me in return?" Liam paused, his mind racing. The sorcerer was powerful, far more powerful than he had imagined, and it was clear that he had little interest in mercy or compassion. But then Liam remembered the lessons he had learned on his journey, the strength of the bond he had formed with the monster, the power of kindness and understanding. He took a deep breath and spoke from the heart. "I offer you the chance to make amends," he said, his voice firm. "Everyone deserves a second chance, even you." The sorcerer's sneer faltered, and a flicker of surprise passed over his features. He had expected anger, defiance, perhaps even a challenge to a battle of magic or might. But this offer of redemption was something he had not anticipated. He looked at the monster, who stood silently beside Liam, its massive form tense and ready to protect the boy at all cost. In the creature's eyes, the sorcerer saw not the blind rage or fear he had expected, but something far more unsettling, hope. For the first time in many years, the sorcerer felt a pang of something he had long thought buried, guilt. The boy's words echoed in his mind, stirring memories he had tried to forget. There had been a time, long ago, when he himself had been a man, not unlike the one he had cursed. But that man had been consumed by ambition, by a hunger for power that had led him down a dark path. In his quest for greatness, he had lost everything: his humanity, his compassion, his soul. The sorcerer's gaze shifted back to Liam, who stood before him with unwavering resolve. The boy's offer was simple yet profound, a chance to undo the wrongs of the past, to reclaim a piece of the humanity he had lost. But could he do it? Could he let go of the darkness that had consumed him for so long? The chamber was silent as the sorcerer wrestled with his decision. Finally, he spoke. "You are a fool, boy," he said, his voice softer now, tinged with something that might have been regret. "A fool for believing that someone like me can be redeemed." Liam shook his head. "You're not beyond redemption," he insisted. "If you lift the curse, if you show that you can do good, you can begin to make amends. It won't be easy, and it won't happen overnight. But it's a start." The sorcerer's eyes flickered with doubt, but there was also a glimmer of something else, hope. Slowly, he raised one hand, and with a wave of his fingers, the air in the chamber shimmered with magic. The light gathered around the monster, enveloping it in a soft, golden glow. For a moment, time seemed to stand still, and then, with a final pulse of energy, the light vanished, leaving the chamber in darkness once more. The monster gasped, its massive form shuddering as the curse that had bound it for so long began to unravel. Its scales melted away, its claws retracted, and its glowing eyes dimmed. Slowly, the creature's monstrous form began to change, shrinking and shifting until, standing where the monster had once been, was a man with kind eyes and a weary, weathered face. Liam stared in awe, hardly able to believe what he was seeing. The curse had been lifted, and the man who had once been a monster now stood before him, whole and human once more. Tears welled in the man's eyes as he looked down at his hands that had once been claws, and he fell to his knees, overwhelmed by emotion. The sorcerer watched in silence, his expression unreadable. But there was a heaviness in his heart, a sense of loss mingled with the faintest hint of relief. He had lifted the curse, but in doing so, he had also lost the power that had sustained him for so long. He was no longer the all-powerful sorcerer he had once been, he was just a man who had made many mistakes. Liam stepped forward, placing a hand on the man's shoulder. "Thank you," he said softly, his voice filled with genuine gratitude. "You did the right thing." The sorcerer met Liam's gaze, and for a moment, there was silence between them. Then, with a slow nod, the sorcerer turned away, his black robes trailing behind him as he walked toward the shadows at the edge of the chamber. "Leave this place," he said, his voice distant and weary. "Go back to your village, and take him with you. I have no place in your world anymore." Liam watched as the sorcerer disappeared into the darkness, his figure swallowed by the shadows that seemed to cling to him like a second skin. There was a part of Liam that wanted to follow, to offer the sorcerer the same chance he had given the monster. But he knew that some journeys had to be taken alone. With the man who had once been a monster by his side, Liam turned and began the long journey back to the village. The storm had passed, and as they stepped out of the castle and into the light of the dawn, the sun broke through the clouds, casting the world in a warm, golden glow. The journey had been long and difficult, but Liam knew it had been worth it. He had kept his promise and, in doing so, had not only saved a life but also shown that even in the darkest of places, there is always a glimmer of hope.